Welcome back. My name is Drifter, and in tonight's video, I'm going to be reading I Woke Up to an Emergency Alert on My Phone. Now There's Creatures Outside, Part 2. So, this is the second part of the last scary story video I did, and if you haven't watched the new part, you can go ahead and click at the top right of the screen, and if you've already watched it, I hope you can enjoy, feel relaxed, and let's get right into it. So it's been a couple of days since my last post. A lot has happened. On a positive note, I'm not dead. However, I'm in a new predicament. I need to post this as a record of what has happened here. I'll start from where I left off on my previous post. The hideous sound from the front door downstairs didn't let up. I needed to decide whether I would find something in the house to hide in, or if I would have to run while those creatures were preoccupied at the front door. Both of these options had downside. If I decided to stay in the house and hide, I'd find myself trapped. And if I decided to run, there's no telling how well their tracking skills are, or even how many more of them are outside. I also have no experience shooting a gun, so I felt as though an enclosed environment would give me the best chance of landing a shot, should it come to that. But then again, there's no telling if a bullet would stop them or not. I do have an attic that I hope would be difficult to reach by those creatures. The opening is in the second bedroom and requires a ladder to get up. Fortunately, I painted that room earlier in the year and borrowed a ladder from my dad, which I have not returned to him yet. With this plan in my head, I immediately put it in action. I needed to gather food and water before going up there, but I didn't know how much time I had before they broke through the front door and the makeshift barricade. The bottom of the stairs are right next to the front door, so even if I couldn't get back to the stairs in time, I'd be dead for sure. I grabbed the pistol that had been sitting beside me and bolted downstairs, and then I realized those creatures weren't just bombarding the front door. The sound of metal scratching came from the windows too. Never have I ever been so thankful that I had security screens installed on those windows, but I couldn't imagine they would hold up for much longer. I had no time to screw around. With haste, I headed towards the kitchen. A lot of food was still on the counter from when I was taking stock. I grabbed a couple of shopping bags from the pantry and scooped up whatever I could from the counter and filled the bags. Not forgetting to grab the can opener, I predicted all the food I had would last me about 2 weeks if I stretched it out, but I didn't have time to gather everything, and I wouldn't be making a second trip down here anytime soon. Water was the most important anyways. Without water, I wouldn't even last a week. The only thing I could think of was to fill all the water bottles I had and hope they would last me until these creatures moved on. I rummaged through the cupboards and found 4 different water bottles of varying sizes and filled them at the tap as fast as I could before throwing them in the bags with the food waistband and lifted the bags, running towards the staircase. A loud crash came from the kitchen window behind me. Not like what I'd already been hearing. It sounded like one of them had gotten through the security screen. I didn't have time to look back, and honestly, I was too scared to. Hoping I'd make it in time, I dashed up the stairs as fast as I could and ran straight for the spare bedroom. I slammed the door behind me and quickly locked it, knowing full well that a thin bedroom door wouldn't stop those things. I dropped the bags on the ground, grabbed the ladder, lining it up with the attic opening. I climbed up and moved the panel covering as fast as I could. More loud crashes and heavy footsteps on the wooden floors could be heard from the downstairs area. There wasn't much time left. I grabbed the bags and lifted them to the attic with all my strength. This is when I realized I'd left my phone in my bedroom. I felt like I needed it in case anybody tried to contact me, but clearly I wasn't in the right state of mind. Without even thinking, I climbed down the ladder away from the safest place I could and swung the door open, about to bolt to my bedroom, stupidly thinking I had time to spare. The figure I saw at the bottom of the staircase stunned me, and I froze for a second. My mom told me to scream, but it was like I was already paralyzed, and nothing came out of my mouth. Its eyes stared wide, the same eyes I had stared into the window from across the street. Suddenly, the figure lunged toward me, up to the stairs, and I snapped out of it. I ran backwards into the spare room and slammed the door closed again. The creature made contact with the door, and a loud thump sound resonated with my ears from the impact. I pounced at the ladder and scurried up through the opening. I don't know how smart they are, but my mind told me I needed to pull up the ladder, or they definitely know I'm up here. I leaned over the opening and reached for the ladder. Grabbing it firmly, I heaved it upwards and backwards. This ladder wasn't light, but the adrenaline coursing through my veins must have helped me as I pulled it up into the attic. Vicious scratching sounds came from the bedroom door, and just as I placed the panel over the opening, the sound of the door being caved in boomed. I held my breath and closed my eyes in the dark. I could hear the creatures below me, scurrying around and destroying everything in the room. It would have torn me apart if it had caught me. I'm sure of that. Soon I could hear the other creatures making their way up the staircase into the room too. The fact that they made no vocal sounds unsettled me, like a silent killer with a mask, but I'm not sure I'd rather be listening to whatever visceral sounds they would make if they had mouths. The only thing I could do was wait until they settled down or lost interest, and keep as quiet as I possibly could. I didn't move an inch for a few hours, and continued listening to the rampage happening below me. I had no way of knowing how good their hearing was, and I was in no rush to find out. I silently prayed that my phone would survive the ordeal, so I wouldn't be completely isolated if there was a chance of contacting someone, and internally reprimanding myself for being stupid enough to forget it. I had no way of knowing what time it was exactly, but a glimpse of sunlight shone through the small window in the attic, signifying that dawn was upon us. I had survived the night, and for that I was thankful. I could still hear some faint sounds coming from the house below, but the creature's rampage had subsided for the most part. As quiet as I could, I grabbed a snack bar out of one of the bags, drank from one of the bottles I had filled, only now realizing how thirsty I was when the lukewarm water that I would usually only drink ice cold met my lips. I gulped down half the bottle before I could stop myself. I didn't want to risk going down anytime soon, so I stayed up in the attic for the entire day. I actually felt relatively safe. I assumed they didn't know I was up here, since I'm sure they would have joined me here by now if they did. But I couldn't stay up here forever. I still needed to get my phone, for obvious reasons, if it hadn't been destroyed yet, that is. I eventually passed out from exhaustion, I think, since I don't remember purposefully laying my head down to rest. Despite waking up knowing that time had definitely passed, eventually I realized I could no longer hear any sound coming from the house below, but getting down and back up wouldn't be a walk in the park. Eventually, I realized I could no longer hear any sound coming from the house below, but getting down and back up again wouldn't be a walk in the park, since I'd need to use the ladder again, and staying anywhere else in the house clearly wasn't safe with what I could only guess the state of the windows and doors being in shambles. Luckily though, if the phone had survived, it would only be in the next room over where I'd left it. I decided to wait a few more hours before executing the retrieve and retreat plan. Slowly, I removed the panel from the attic opening and quietly surveyed the spare room below. Everything looked to have been torn to shreds, and I could only imagine what would have happened had I taken just a few moments too long to get up into the attic. Whilst the room was in a mess, there was no sign of the creatures in the direct vicinity. I poked my head out further and peeked towards the bedroom door, well, what was left of it at least. Again, no sign of them. Still, I couldn't hear a thing from downstairs, so I quietly moved the ladder and lowered it down slowly. I made sure to hold the pistol tight while climbing down the ladder, as light-footed as I could, and made my way to the doorway. The bottom of the stairs looked clear too, but I wasn't going to risk going down there right now. I crept towards the open doorway that was once my bedroom door, and surveyed the room silently, trying to locate my phone. My bed had been turned upwards, and clothes from my closet that had been hanging neatly were now strewn across the floor with plenty of ferocious slashes through them. Finally, I located my phone. It seemed odd that it was just sitting so perfectly on top of my favorite jacket, but I grabbed it and turned towards the doorway. That's when I saw the creature rise onto two legs through my balcony window, like it had been waiting for me in a crouched position. Once again, the creature stared at me for a moment with its deep, sunken white eyes, but without thinking, I aimed the pistol at the creature and pulled the trigger. The sound of the glass shattering made a deafening sound, and I fell backwards. I didn't know if I had hit the creature or not, but I needed to get back into the attic, now, if I had any chance of getting out of this unscathed. The sound of the gun would surely alert the others. I knew this, so I immediately got to my feet and started back towards the attic opening. I glanced at where the creature had been a second ago, but it wasn't there anymore. Assuming I had hit it, I made my way back to the spare room and hurried up the ladder with my phone in my back pocket. The sound of the creatures galloping up the stairs surprised me, and I glanced toward the staircase from the open doorway. They saw me this time. I hurtled up into the attic and kicked the ladder out from under myself. I quickly moved back the panel over the opening and threw the heavy bags on top of it, hoping to weigh it down. Immediately, the pounding began. Pulling my phone out of my back pocket, I unlocked the screen, and another emergency alert flashed on the screen. It read, "Seek nearest bombing shelter immediately. Saturation bombing inbound. ETA 1500/3 p.m. The clock on my phone showed the time as 12:30 p.m. If you're reading this right now, please respond. So that was part 3 of I woke up to an emergency alert on my phone. Now there's creatures outside. I hope that you found it relaxing, and I hope that you could have enjoyed listening to it or watching it. And yeah, so that's it for me. I do apologize for not being able to upload recently. I hope that you guys could understand, but I will definitely be back to uploading once every other day. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day or night. Peace out.